This presentation references the initial development level teaching portfolio in Educational Foundations 2300. This is the final exam of Ed Foundations 2300, but it's also the document that is used to board into the College of Education. So it's a very important document that is very crucial to your success and your entrance into the College of Education. So we're going to spend some time talking through the portfolio today and looking at a couple of different pieces of information about it. Our objectives of this presentation are to discuss the intent and the structure of the portfolio, to identify the specific components of the portfolio, and also to encourage you to begin collecting the elements of this portfolio now, so that toward the end of the semester it's not such a big push to get all these parts and pieces together. So, the general intent of the portfolio. This is the document, this is the item that is being submitted to the boarding committee. So it's the document that the boarding committee is going to see when you sit down in front of them to board into the College of Education. So every concentration in the College of Education has their own guidelines for how they want you to actually submit the portfolio. But all of the concentrations will look at your portfolio. So it's very important that you spend the time to make your portfolio as good as you can. This is one of the best ways to begin making a good impression on that committee, is by having complete and thorough portfolio. You'll note that several times in this presentation I'll mention grammar, spelling, punctuation, those items as being important in the portfolio. That's very true. Every boarding situation that I've been in and I've sat in on, the comments have been made about whether the portfolio is grammatically correct or whether the correct punctuation is being used. And if it is, it looks very good on the applicant. If it's not as correct as it could be, it doesn't reflect as well on you. So I'm going to say that multiple times today, that the having good grammar, good punctuation, good spelling, and all of those crossing your T's and dotting your I's is very important. The portfolio itself functions as a representation of the teacher that you are at this point. There's not an expectation here that you know everything about about the teaching field. The expectation here is that you are beginning to develop your teacher self, and this portfolio is the means by which you're showing who you are right now as far as a teacher, what you intend to do as a teacher, and why teaching is the field for you. The portfolio creates a very broad picture of what makes you a great teacher. So the intention of all of the parts and pieces are to paint this big panoramic picture of all of your skills already. So the goal is to highlight all of the variety of things that you are already doing. This collection of documents is to aid you in collecting more documents later on. The portfolio is something that you should keep and build on throughout your entire teaching career. So it's a way to develop it's a way to develop your professional self, and a way to have evidence of that development. For example, you'll start creating your resume will be part of your portfolio. This begins the process of building your resume, and hopefully that's the resume that you will end up using when you apply for your first teaching position. The nice thing about having that resume in your portfolio is you are actually have it next to the items that validate what's on your resume, so that if someone were to ask you about something in an interview, you have the materials to share with them that talks about materials to share with the person in the interview to back up what you've said in your resume. So it's a collection of documents to aid your growth as you continue in education. Now, the portfolio itself is directly connected to your 12-hour field placement in 2300. Therefore, the credibility of the portfolio is innately tied to your completion of the field placement. So if you do not complete your field placement hours, you don't complete all 12 of your hours and have them completely documented before the due date for the portfolio, you will not get any credit for the portfolio for our course. So completion of those hours in a timely manner, scheduling those hours in an appropriate way right now is very important to your successful completion of the portfolio. So remember, if you do not have your field placement hours done before the portfolio's due date, then the portfolio itself will not receive any credit. The reason this connection is so strong is the majority of the documents that you'll be building for the portfolio you'll actually use during your field placement. You'll use in your field placement. So the connection between the two is very, very strong. Your portfolio is actually built on LiveText, which is a cloud-based web service that you buy a subscription to, and I hope you've already done that. LiveText provides a structure for your portfolio so that when you submit it into the College of Education for your boarding, the same format will be true for everyone's portfolio, so they know exactly where everything is. So when you log into LiveText, this assignment will be assigned to you, and then you'll be able to put your materials and organize your materials on LiveText as you generate them and as you complete them. I'm not going to delve into LiveText in this presentation. We'll have a guest speaker from the Educational Technology Resource Center who will tell you more about how to use LiveText. I'm going to advocate that you get comfortable with LiveText because it's a service that you have access to for 5 years. And I'm going to advocate as well that you use it as a place to save your materials because it is cloud storage. But in this presentation, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on how to use LiveText itself. I simply wanted to show you what the screen looks like so you know what you're expecting. There is a distinction in this screen between the LiveText Field Experience Edition and the Non-Field Experience Edition. The Field Experience Edition is the one that you need for this course and subsequent courses, and it will have the colored banner, the color ETSU banner across the top. The Non-Field Experience does not, so that's how you can tell which one you have. You need the Field Experience version for our course. Okay, looking at the general structure of the portfolio, your portfolio is separated into essentially 5 different parts. The first part is cover page and introduction. The second is the next part is section 1, which is the background knowledge. Section 2 is selected entries, and this is where you get to some very specific documentation about a specific pedagogical documentation of teaching strategies, actual teaching materials, etc. And then the third section, section 3, is professional evaluation, and at the very end you have your concluding reflection and then the dispositions rubric. That's the big overarching picture of what the portfolio looks like. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through each and every one of those items on this list and talk about what they are, talk about guidelines and formatting so that those are clear later on. All the parts and pieces of your portfolio that we're talking about here, these items we're going to discuss, are referenced for you in the portfolio module on D2L. So everything that I'm going to talk about today also has instruction sheets on D2L. So you can find those on D2L under the portfolio module. Feel free to go in there, and if you have more questions about the instructions, please let me know, and I certainly will. We'll talk about those specifically. Also during our course this semester, we're going to talk about each part and piece in class as well. So along with this presentation, we'll talk about those parts and pieces too. So everything I referenced today is available for you under the portfolio module on D2L. Pay attention to detail as we go. Grammar, spelling matter. There, I said it again. Think about how the boarding committee is going to actually see your portfolio. In other words, make sure that everything you present has its best foot forward so that they are seeing the best possible work you could do. I recommend that you have someone else flip through your portfolio before you submit it finally, so that you have another set of eyes on the portfolio so that you don't leave any glaring errors that you just overlook because you spent so much time looking at it. So I recommend you have a family member. It could be a classmate. If you have a professor that's willing to go over it for you, I recommend that you do that. Also recommend that you get to know how to use a scanner. They have a scanner. Scanners are available for you in the Educational Technology Resource Center. If you have friends or family that have scanners, get to know how to use it. If nothing else, you're welcome to contact me and let me know if you need some help. I've got a scanner in my office, or I can give you some references and advice about how to use them. Now, the individual parts and pieces of your portfolio. The cover page is the very first thing that the boarding committee is going to see. This is a screenshot of what the portfolio looks like. It's again a single document that has this particular information on it that is edited to your appropriate situation. Make sure the dates are correct for you. Make sure your contact information is correct. Double check spelling and punctuation. This is a document you can download from D2L, update your own information in it, and then save it and upload it to LiveText. Make certain, absolutely certain, that your email address is accurate on this document, please. The introduction is a written document of 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph is very, very self-explanatory. It's a personal introduction. Who are you and why teaching? Why is teaching the place for you? It's a 5-sentence minimum, so this is, in a sense, a shortened version of your belief statement, which we'll talk about in a minute. The goal of this introduction is to give the board committee a general sense of who you are, just so they get to know you before you sit down in the board committee, in front of the board committee. Paragraph 2 is an introduction to the actual portfolio that the committee is going to see. Again, it's a 5-sentence minimum. The goal here is to give the committee some sense of what they are seeing when they look at your portfolio. So how is that what they're seeing related to who you are going to be as a teacher? Remember, the work in your portfolio is only related to work from 2100 and 2300. And also, this is a great opportunity for you to share with the committee what particular pieces of evidence in the portfolio you want to make sure that they see. Maybe on your resume you've got some great examples of your educational volunteer work, or maybe you did a very good job on the communication and educational setting presentation. Those items might be something you want to highlight in the introduction so that you're sure that the members of the boarding committee will look at those first, so they get those really good examples of who you are. Potentially, those are the items that they're going to ask you about in your boarding committee. This is your first opportunity to make a good impression using your introductory paragraph. So again, grammar, spelling, punctuation, all of those need to be appropriate here. Make certain that you double check this and triple check it. Have somebody else read it. Now we're on to section 1. This is background information. This is all the material, all the stuff that backs up what you're actually going to be presenting in the portfolio. In other words, this is the foundational. These are the foundational documents that say, yes, I have successfully completed my general core classes. I have successfully completed a practice or ACT test that says that I am ready to board into the College of Education. So the items that will be in here: your resume, belief statement from 2100, program of study that's specific to your content area, the unofficial transcript that shows the courses that you've taken previously, and your praxis and ACT scores. The resume, again, this is the format and checklist are available for you on D2L. Please, please, please check format. Format is huge with a resume. There are 8 headings, 8 total headings on here. You should make sure that you leave all 8 of those bold headings on your resume, even if there's nothing under them. The goal, hopefully, is that you are gaining more experience over the course of this semester prior to your boarding to put more information there. Make sure that the dates are in the appropriate order with the most recent first. Remember, your resume should be a living document that you're constantly updating and changing. So the resume you submit at the beginning of the semester may be and should be different than the resume that is in the final version of your portfolio. So I recommend that you spend some time with it now, and you're constantly updating as you complete more information, as you complete more experiences throughout the semester. You will include with your resume your references. They should be on a second sheet, on a second piece of paper, on a second page. So your resume itself should be a single page. Your references should be on the second page. Make sure also that you get permission from your references before you list them. Grammar, spelling, vital to this document. Make sure to utilize the checklist on D2L. The belief statement is the document you created in 2100. You should update it and revise it. I recommend that you reread it now and then reread it another time before your final submission, just to make sure that you still believe everything that you believed in it when you wrote it the first time. This is one of the documents that the board committee does focus on. They do read it because it's a very free form and open forum for you to share why you believe that education is the right path for you to take. This is also a document that's going to evolve in time into your philosophy of teaching in your specific content area. So you're going to continue to edit this document later on as you continue in the College of Education. Use this opportunity to think about why you want to teach in the specific area you want to teach. That question in some form will come up during your board interview. I was sitting on a special education board interview last semester, and that was one of the first questions. Why is special education right for you? And it tied directly back to the belief statement. So this is a nice opportunity to prepare for your board interview by revising this document. Again, grammar, spelling, this is another opportunity to make a good impression about your professionalism and seriousness with this document. The program of study is specific to your content area. You can download your program of study from the College of Education website, and the link is available for you here. You print the appropriate document, complete it, handwrite it, complete the information on it, and then you'll scan that back in and put it into live text. If you have questions on your program of study, I recommend that you go to Student Services in Morph Pickle 321. They can give you some more details about that program of study. You might also talk to your specific content area if you have further questions about it. On the program of study, you'll be asked to note which classes you have taken and the scores you gained in those classes. If you're in progress, if you're currently taking one of the classes listed on the program of study, you can list in progress IP on there, or simply leave it blank. That will be filled in for you after you complete the semester as well. Next comes the unofficial transcript. This is simply the transcript downloaded from GoldLink. This is unofficial, does not have to be signed. This is so that the board committee has all of your grade information right in front of them when you sit down to speak with them. So you can download it directly from GoldLink and put it in the live text document. Or if you do have an official transcript that has been given to you, you can scan that in as well, as long as it's up to date. So please make sure that it is up to date given your current course status. And the last piece of information that goes in section 1 is your SAT scores and your Praxis score. So whatever scores you are using to board into the College of Education, those are the scores should be represented here. It could be directly taken from the website, or it could be from the score report that was sent to you. It simply needs to be a document that officially shows your most accurate information on either the Praxis or the ACT/SAT scores. Again, scan that and put that in live text as well. Section 2 of the portfolio contains selected entries. These are materials and evidence from your pedagogical work thus far. So these are pieces and parts of your teaching experience up to this point. So these are chiefly related to your field placement. Without completing your field placement hours, again, as we said earlier, Section 2 would be very difficult to complete. The items that are in Section 2 are the Bloom's Taxonomy assignment, the performance-based activity lesson plan, and the rubric that's associated with that lesson plan, and the performance-based lesson plan journal reflection. The guided observations are also included in here, as well as a communication educational setting presentation, which we will complete in our course. The Bloom's Taxonomy assignment is an assignment we will talk about in class. You will need to create 3 questions with potential answers per level of Bloom's Taxonomy. So remember, there are 6 levels of Bloom's, so in all told, you'll need 18 total questions for Bloom's Taxonomy. More details about the Bloom Taxonomy assignment will come in another presentation. The document you're including in your portfolio here is an example to show the board that you are able to develop age-appropriate and content-appropriate questions for your content area. So attention must be paid to the words that you choose and the clear intent for the student responses to those questions. So attention to detail is very, very necessary here because this questioning strategies are central to your success as a teacher. So the document that you're including is a revised version of the one we do in our course. You'll have an opportunity to submit the assignment to your instructor for 2300. The instructor will then assess it and get it back to you. You'll create a revised version that the instructor will still make comments on, that then you can you should revise again and put back in your portfolio. Make sure you're edited for clarity and grade appropriateness as well. Academic language and the appropriate language for the use in the classroom should be represented here. Performance-based activity lesson plan. This is the lesson plan associated with the lesson that you are teaching in your field experience. During your field placement, you'll teach a 10 to 15 minute lesson plan. You'll create this lesson plan with your mentoring teacher. The lesson plan will follow the ETSU College of Education format, which we will discuss in class. And the lesson plan must show a clear connection among the standard or standards that you're going to be teaching, the lesson objectives for those standards, the steps that you're going to use to teach the lesson, and the means by which you're going to assess whether the lesson was successful or not. This is amongst the hardest of the assignments in the portfolio because it simply takes a lot of time. It's a very foreign format if you've never written a lesson plan before. And so this is very much a challenge for many students. You can use your connection with your mentoring teacher to perfect this lesson plan over time. Again, this lesson plan will be described in more detail at a later date. You'll include the performance-based activity lesson plan in the portfolio to show the board committee that you are using those pedagogical skills that you're learning and applying those in your classroom even before you started taking a lot of methods courses. So the goal here is experience in writing a lesson plan. They're not looking for a perfect lesson plan per se, but what they're looking for is your ability to try and work through the problems that come up in crafting a lesson plan. Connected to that lesson plan then will be a grading rubric used to evaluate the specific objectives of the lesson. So the rubric is tied directly to the objectives of the lesson plan that you've written. The rubric must cover the extent of the entire lesson, and it's not the only data source you're using for successful completion of the objectives. It's one data source that you're using. There is an example of a rubric on D2L. Using a rubric in this way is a means by which to show whether students completed the objectives for the lesson and have specific data points to determine how well they succeeded. You can craft your own rubric if you prefer, or modify the example on D2L. You'll submit in your portfolio a blank copy of the rubric, although you will fill out the rubric for every student that takes part in your lesson. You submit a blank copy so that when you comment on the results of this rubric in your lesson reflection, the reviewers can look back at the blank copy of the rubric and know exactly where the assessment began. So you'll use the comments section of the lesson plan reflection to reflect upon how well the rubric assessed whether your students learned or were successful in the lesson. The lesson plan journal reflection is the opportunity that you have to talk about how well your lesson went in your field placement experience. So you'll need to talk about specific qualities of that lesson related to the students that we're learning. For example, the appropriateness of that activity. How did you know that that activity was appropriate for the grade level of students that you worked with? The appropriateness of the questions you asked, the activities performed, and the ability to reach the lesson's objectives. How did you know that those were appropriate questions, appropriate activities, and how did you know that those were appropriate objectives for students to reach? Also, the efficiency and effectiveness of the rubric. So this is where you assess how well a rubric worked and how well you can analyze the results from the rubric. This is part of being a reflective practitioner, where you take a rubric and use that opportunity to determine if your lesson was successful. Also, the reliability of the information collected regarding that lesson's effectiveness. How reliable was your rubric? How reliable were your assessment strategies? Also, this journal reflection seeks to comment on your ability to manage the classroom space, manage students' attention, and manage students' behavior. And then in general, use the lesson plan journal reflection to reflect on the future applications of your desire to become a teacher. Does this strengthen your desire to teach? What strengths do you already possess as far as delivering a lesson? What strengths might you need to what areas might you need to strengthen in delivering lessons? And how does that make you feel about your teaching experience from this point forward? The lesson plan journal reflection is a perfect place for you to really show your prowess at being reflective of the profession of teaching, which reflective practicing is part of the College of Education conceptual framework. So this document does a very nice job at discussing your willingness to grow in your field. Also in this section of your portfolio, you'll create 3 documents that are guided observations. The first 2 of those guided observations are, the topics for the first 2 are dictated for you. All of the guided observations have the instruction sheets for you on D2L. The first one is contextual factors that discusses the environment both in and around the school. So that talks about the area around the school, so it's demographic information, talks about the programs that the school offers. It also talks about the teachers. It talks about the general makeup of the school. It's very much data driven, and it discusses the numbers around the school you'll be observing. The second guided observation is about the physical arrangements of the classroom space. It's about the learning environment in the classroom. So it's about looking at the classroom and observing how this teacher has the classroom organized and how that affects learning. Then the third guided observation is one of choice. There are many choices that you can choose from, specific lists of questions that you can choose from for the last guided observation. And those are applicable given your various experiences in the field placement. Remember, these guided observations are observations, not judgments. In other words, I very much want you to focus on what you saw and what that means, rather than how you feel about it. Some of the observations might actually ask you questions to speculate about what you would do in a certain situation. In those situations, all you're doing is applying what you've seen and saying, in the future, this is how I might do the same thing in a slightly different way. Again, this is not judgment, though. This is about observing the characteristics that currently exist and talking about what is there. So a focus on observation. This also makes me desire to comment on a strategy during your field placement. I recommend that you have a piece of notebook paper or a notebook in order to take some of these observation notes as you see things happen. So therefore, it might be worthwhile before you start your observation to look through the guided observation choices and the physical arrangements and contextual factors to know what you need to look for as you observe. Again, like every other written document in this paper, in this portfolio, grammar and clarity of writing speak volumes about your professionalism. The last document that goes in section 2 of your portfolio is the communication in an educational setting presentation. This is a presentation that shows your ability to share information professionally. This is, in essence, mimicking what you would do if you were to make a presentation to a group of faculty members at a school. It's a presentation that shows your presentation abilities, your research skills, and it also is a comment on your professionalism as you check for grammar and spelling, as you update that document and that presentation to make sure it's appropriate. This should be submitted as a PowerPoint presentation or a Prezi link to LiveText so that the board committee can actually look through your presentation and see what pieces of information you brought up. This is another assignment that we'll talk about more specifically in later presentations in this class. This is something you will be presenting in front of your classmates as well. What you'll put in the LiveText portfolio will be the PowerPoint presentation itself or the link to the Prezi. Section 3 of your portfolio looks at professional evaluation. These are reflective documents that show your willingness to assess yourself, so again, that's a reflective practitioner, and to reflect upon the educational space. This is also where you're going to put the documents that validate your field placement experience. The field placement journals 1 through 3, these are reflective journals that you'll write about your field placement. You'll complete 3 of these. Each of the reflective journals focuses on a very specific event. So it's one event that you're focusing on. The events do not have to be extremes. They don't have to be extremely good or extremely bad. They can simply be an interaction or event that you found noteworthy as you observed. Each journal must have the following parts: a sequence of events, significant episode, and an analysis of those events in the episode. Some more details here. The sequence of events, this is the order of events. List is literally a bulleted list of what happened. Not why, just what. The significant episode, I like to call it the newspaper article about what took place in the classroom. So now you're going to take that sequence of events and flesh it out into a more narrative story about what took place in the classroom. This is where you can put some more context into the event that took place. You can put some more detail about what the teacher did or said and how the teacher interacted with his or her students. Lastly is the analysis. This is the true reflection. What did you actually think about this event? So this is where you get to tell us opinion. What has this event taught you about your future teaching? What did you learn from what happened? Maybe you learned a discipline strategy that you didn't think of. Maybe you learned something that you desperately don't want to do in your future classroom. That's what these journals are about, is talking about how this event has impacted who you're going to be when you become a new teacher. The field placement evaluation. This is the evaluation sheet that is completed by your mentor and teacher at the conclusion of your field placement. You should scan the signed version of your field placement evaluation into live text, but prior to scanning it, I want you to cover up the teacher's signature, because you may end up using this portfolio for a job interview in the future. Therefore, the portfolio is considered a public document, and you don't want your mentor and teacher's signature floating off into the internet. So cover up your teacher's signature before you upload it, but retain the physical copy of this evaluation sheet for your records in case it was ever in question. This is also where your timesheet will go. This is the daily log you use to complete while you are at your field placement site. Remember that this time log should be identical to the sign-in sheet at your field placement site. Just like the evaluation form, have your teacher sign it after you've totaled the time, cover the signature, scan it into live text, and then retain the physical copy for your records in case there were ever a question. Now, the very last piece of your portfolio, the second to last piece of your portfolio, is your concluding reflection. This concluding reflection is one of the most important documents, as the portfolio committee will read this. This is a distillation of what you've gained from your experiences in 2100 and 2300 and what you are using as a determination for what you are using to determine whether you should continue into College of Education or not. Spending time on this document is very instructive prior to going into your board interview, because it gives you an opportunity to reflect back on all of the information you've taken in over the course of 21 and 2300. Specifically, this concluding reflection should identify 2 to 3 artifacts, events, activities, some things from 2300 that you have experienced that have actually impacted you. Take some time to describe each one very briefly, then describe the value that those events, those artifacts, those activities had on your growth as a teacher. This should be in the range of 1.5 to 2 pages, double spaced, Times New Roman, 12-point font, as all of the documents in here should. Use effective and appropriate grammar here. Spelling and punctuation are necessary in this document, as this is a document that is very much looked at by the board committee. So take your time as you craft this. Obviously, this document cannot be crafted until the end of the semester, after you've had all of the experiences that EDFN 2300 offers. The very last document you'll include in your portfolio is the dispositions rubric. You've already had some time to assess the dispositions rubric once at the beginning of the semester in your dispositions rubric reflection document. I'm going to ask you to do that several other times throughout the semester, and you'll submit a final self-assessment for your portfolio. So you'll actually print the rubric yourself, mark the values on it, and then scan it back into the document. That means that self-assessment will go to the board committee. You could also download the document, mark it on your computer, and upload it that way. Either of those work to put your dispositions rubric into your portfolio. What's going to happen, though, once your portfolio is submitted for assessment to me, to the instructor, I'll actually take your self-assessment, look at it, also look at your work in our course, make my own assessment on the dispositions rubric, and a combination of those two will be what your boarding committee sees. The dispositions rubric is a rubric that is utilized throughout the College of Education. It starts being utilized in 2300 and will be utilized by your professors throughout your educational foundation courses and into your residency. So this is the first of many times you will see this dispositions rubric. And this is the opportunity you have right now to make an initial impression upon your boarding committee about the dispositions that you have gained in 2300 that make you a successful teacher. So, some final thoughts about your portfolio. This is your final exam in 2300. So this document certainly impacts your score in 2300. Doing very well on this will help your score in 2300. Remember, you have to have a B- in 2300 in order to board. Some students do lose some points on their portfolio simply because they didn't take the time to go through the portfolio with a fine-tooth comb and find grammar, find punctuation errors, find spelling. So take your time as you complete your portfolio. There are a bunch of items in it, so I recommend that you start right now to collect these documents. Use live text right now as a cloud storage device. If nothing else, save your portfolio documents on a flash drive. Save them somewhere other than one computer. In case that computer were to crash, you would lose all of the work you've done on it. So I recommend that you back up your portfolio documents and don't put them all in one spot. As I've said multiple times, grammar, spelling, punctuation are very important in your portfolio. They count. The points matter. Every single point matters, and grammar and spelling are easy ways to lose points if they're not up to par. I recommend that you create a checklist for yourself. Make deadlines, make goals for what you're going to have done when, and therefore you can keep yourself on track as far as the portfolio. The vast majority of folks that have problems with their portfolio are the ones that get behind, and then they're in that last week before the portfolio is due, and they're rushing to get the materials together. And when you rush, of course, you don't do as well as you would have liked to do. So my final thoughts are: take your time, prepare, get your materials together now, so that by the end of the semester you're not rushing to get your portfolio complete.